Starliner Media. Starliner Media presents Music Night at the Majestic with your host, Michael Boswell.
All right, it's time once again for Music Night at the Majestic, and with us tonight, David Sancious. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'll tell you, David, you're a man after my own heart, because I don't think either of us have ever found a musical style that we didn't like.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, for you, from what I've read, like most very successful musicians, you started quite young. At picking up a guitar, was it correct?
No, piano was the first instrument when I was about 5 years old.
Okay. Now, did you have a plastic guitar, like a play guitar that you kind of gravitated
toward?
Yeah.
See, that was actually, so you're being very technical. Because technically, the first instrument really was this little plastic guitar that my mom and dad got for me for Christmas. And I had plucked out a couple of notes on that while he was listening to a Harry Belafonte record. And they all came around and was like, it just happened to be this, I didn't even know how to tune a guitar or anything. It just happened that this thing of plastic was in tune with these two notes, and I just kept playing. And then, that was sort of the start of something like, wow. But then a little later, we moved from Asbury Park to Belmar, and we had a piano in that house. So that's when it really started. And I had a lot of piano lessons. My mom taught me for a year. She found me a fantastic virtuoso classical pianist to study with. I studied with him for about 8 or 9 years or so. And, but yeah.
Well, tell me this, David. As a kid, were you somebody who saved their allowance or what have you to go get the record, like a record a week?
Yeah, I got to say, what money I made as a kid. Well, there's one thing. When you grow up on the Jersey Shore, when it's wintertime, it snows like insanely, especially back when I was born in the 50s and 60s and all that. The weather was even different. So you would shovel snow. We had this little gang of kids, and we would shovel snow, shovel people's walks, and make some money. And then we would go down to the local slot car place and spend all our money on slot cars. That's what So then a little after that, when I started playing in clubs, I actually, because my father, God rest him, he knew the owner of this place in Asbury Park called the Orchid Lounge. And the Orchid Lounge was like a big jazz club back in the day. The top jazz acts came through. Jimmy Smith, all the organ players like Jimmy Smith, Jack McDuff, Groove Holmes, guitar players like Kenny Burrell, and sax players. So because he knew the owner of this club, he was able to get me in with him. I was like 12. And my mom didn't mind it because I'm with my father. And so they would sneak me in. It's just like walk me in. And there was one little seat that we could sit at that was near the stage. And it gave you this sort of side view of the stage. So you weren't looking at the performers, you were looking across the stage so you could see their hands and what they were doing. It was incredible. And he did that with me for a couple of years. And then I started playing illegally in clubs. I was probably like about 13 or 14. And I always tell the joke, it's like I was 18 years old for about 6 years. Because if I ever was in a situation where someone asked, how old is he or whatever, it was just 18 was the stock answer. And I think even when I was 15 was when I met Bruce at Upstage. And it's the same thing. So for another 3 years, I was 18 years old. But I did get an early start, and I think that's a really that's been a good thing. It's been a real sort of plus for me.
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you, you mentioned Bruce. That's obviously one of the things that the viewers' questions were about. They wanted to know, how did you come to meet Bruce and then end up joining the band?
I met Bruce one night at Upstage. This was a summertime. I can't remember the year, but it was definitely summertime. And I had been going to Upstage because I didn't know the musicians on that scene. I was sort of fresh to it. I used to go to Upstage and dance, frankly. I was into dancing back in those days, and I would I would go to upstage and dance. It was kind of part of the club was a folk club, and then above that floor was this psychedelic kind of, full on thing. So I had met Gary Talent maybe a couple of weeks before at a recording session for somebody, and we hit it off right away. And I walked one night because I didn't have a car or a bicycle or anything. So my town where I lived was about 8 miles from Asbury Park. So I decided I was just going to walk. It was a beautiful summer night. Just a straight line of 8 miles. It was not a problem. It was great. I'm like, a healthy teenager. So I get to upstage and I walk in, and Bruce and Gary are standing at the top of the stairs, and they're organizing a jam session for the next round of music, because the place used to open at like, I don't know, 9 o'clock, and then close at midnight, and they kicked everyone out, and they would open up again at like 1 o'clock until 5 in the morning, something crazy like that. So they were organizing this jam session. I get up top of the stairs. I say hi to Gary. Gary introduces me to Bruce. Bruce says, "Hey, nice to meet you. We're organizing a jam session for the next, session. Do you want to sit in?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely." And that was really it. That was the first night we actually met. I'd seen him play before because he was way famous locally, way before he had a recording contract or anything. But that was the first night we met, and first night we played together.
What do you remember most about that night, about that first jam session?
Well, what I remember was it was really long. It went on, and we basically went on until we closed the place, different people coming up and down. But I think I tried to stay up there as long as I could because it was great. We were having a great time. And what I remember about it, though, and I think it was the same night, I'm pretty sure it was, we're all walking home now. The place is 5 in the morning. The sun's coming up, summertime in Asbury Park. And we're walking to our cars or bikes or, however we're going to get home. And I'm walking next to Bruce, and he says, I'm about to break up this band I have. He had a very popular band called Steel Mill. And he said, I'm going to stop doing that soon. I'm going to do something really different. Would you like to be in it? Do you want to play keyboards in it? I said, absolutely. Yeah. And I was fresh out of school. I actually dropped out of high school in the middle of my 3rd year, which reasons I won't go into, which I do not suggest, kids. Stay in school. No, don't follow my example. Special situation. But and that was it. And that was the beginning of us, playing together. And then Clarence came into our lives, and that was a whole other beginning of another phase.
There's quite a bit of mythology about Clarence's arrival at the club that night.
Yeah, I know.
How much of it is real? How much of it is kind of grown in stature?
I'm going to say that probably the weather was real. It probably really was a stormy, kind of crazy night. But I must have been looking somewhere else when the door blew off. I didn't see that. I don't remember that. But it could well have happened. It could well have happened. So, yeah.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that we had a number of people ask about was you were the only member of the band who actually lived on E Street.
That's right.
What was the impetus for naming the band that if you were the only member who lived there?
I get asked this question a lot, and I can't. Someone should really ask Bruce that question. They really should ask him, because it was his decision at the end of the day. And it was a point where he wanted to call it something. We had this informal kind of thing. Of course, it was Bruce Springsteen, but we had these sort of different configurations of the group because, say, for instance, sometimes Stevie Van Zandt was in it, sometimes he wasn't. And then there was versions without Clarence, and there's, of course, when Clarence came along, and then, so he wanted to call it something. And I remember one night we were coming home from being out around Chicago way, doing some kind of touring in bars, and he said we ought to come up with a name, and Vinny Lopez suggested the name Angels Underwear, and I said, Vinny, I can't be in a band called Angels Underwear. I can't make it. That's not going to work. My parents, can't do it. And that went on like that, and threw a few names around. But I really don't know. I remember we turned the corner and there were these kind of markers, these like white obelisk markers, and it had in black letters, E Street, 11th Avenue, 12th Avenue, whatever. And he sort of saw it and read it. He kind of repeated it a few times, but I don't know. It just one day we got at rehearsal and they said, this is what we're calling it. But someone should really ask him directly. I've never done it. What I've never done, I've asked him, but I considered it I consider it to this moment an honor, to be, that he just chose to call it that he chose to recognize the energy of the place, and the fact that I'm associated with it is even more of an honor. But yeah, you said someone should ask him directly that, and then.
Well, we'll have to try to get him on the show here. That I'll ask him, then I'll let you know, David.
Great.
Well, I'll tell you, while we're talking about that era of your career, you were quite prominent on the Greetings from Asbury Park album. Yep. What do you remember about those sessions creating that album?
I remember I had just come back to New Jersey from living in Richmond, Virginia for about 2 years. And Ernest Carter was down there with me for a while. And I got a call from Bruce saying that he, got a contract. And, can I be on he really wanted me to be on the record. So, and I was coming home anyway, because I had my fill of Richmond, Virginia in the 1960s. But what do I remember about the sessions?
Or is there a song that stands out for you on that album? No pun intended.
No, there's not one thing that stands out. I guess I remember the atmosphere. What I remember actually is the feeling of achievement, of success, because that's what everyone wanted, Everyone wanted to get their contract and be with a record company and put out records, go around the world and do tours. So just the fact that he had made it on that level, and Columbia Records was crazy about him, and he had a lot of support. He had the kind of support that most artists wouldn't get today. I mean, I think it would be impossible, but I just remember that atmosphere of like, wow, we're here. We're on a different level. We're not just in the bars in New Jersey, We're in professional recording studios, and this is really happening.
Yeah. Well, now you actually formed Tone in that same period of time, correct? 74, right after the first two albums?
I did. We did first two, and we think Greetings, Wildly Innocent, East Street Shuffle, Born to Run. Yeah, Tone was a sort of ongoing project that really started when I lived in Richmond, Virginia with Ernest Carter. And a little technical fact, the original bass player in that group was actually Gary Tallon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and we did a demo. We called it something else. It wasn't a good band. It was called Cinnamon or something. I don't remember. But we learned some songs and we did a demo. Gary got married and moved away somewhere. And then just Ernest and I were there. And then Bruce went to California and became Bruce. And then, got back to New York. And then I got the call to do the record. So it was a kind of, I just think, again, as energy, I just remember that we really were like happy. Like small M made it. We made it, to another level of professionalism, to what we wanted to do. Because I personally, and I know Bruce for sure, and I think without speaking for anyone, I can say the same. We all intended to do this for the rest of our lives. It wasn't like, hey, let's do this, and if we don't have a hit record or something, then I don't know, let's go be whatever. Everyone was like in it for your life. So
yeah. Now the on Born to Run, that's you on the famous piano on that track. Yeah. How about that session? Was there what was the vibe when you were recording that one?
The vibe on that was a lot of work because Bruce used to put in super long hours in the studio then. He doesn't quite do it quite the same way, but back then it was like super long hours. And that record, that particular track, Born to Run, was started while we were doing the Wildly Innocent and the East Street Shuffle. the basic track for that was recorded for while we were recording the rest of the songs for Wild the Inner and East Street Shuffle. It just didn't get done. And I think also he may have been like saving it for the next thing anyway. He may have been thinking about the next record after the Wildly Innocent, but we certainly started working on it for those sessions. And what I remember about it was that we were on a brief break on the road, because the record company used to pretty much keep you out there on the road. And they would give you they'd give you a budget. You'd had 6 weeks in the studio and then get back out there and sell the thing, you know? And we were on a break from that. I remember like a couple of us were sick. Clarence had the flu. I had some kind of tonsillitis thing going on. And but the studio was set up that there were rooms where you could go and sleep if we weren't cutting basic tracks, which involved everybody all at once. You could go, take a nap or chill out or just go feel bad somewhere else, whatever. But it's just a lot of hours, a lot of very focused work. And, you stop to eat and hang out a little bit and talk about it and go.
Yeah.
And a lot of getting up early in the morning and then getting in the car and then getting back on the road. I remember that stuff.
Well, as I mentioned, you had Tone, going simultaneously there. Your first album, Forest of Feelings.
Yeah.
The opening, Sweet Cassandra.
Mm-hmm.
Take that when you hear that song, the first time you hear it, it's almost like a statement of, I'm here, now listen to what I've got to say. I mean, that song really grabs you and gets your attention.
Thank you. I called it, go ahead, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
No, the reason it's called Sweet Cassandra is actually, I had a brief kind of, not an affair, but a kind of crush, a brief association with Clarence Clemens' cousin, Cassandra. And I had written this piece of music. She was a lovely person. It's just very brief, and it wasn't anything near a full-on relationship. But I had written that piece of music, and it had a big effect on me, and I wanted to call it something beautiful. And it is technically a suite of music. It goes through different time signatures and stuff. So it's a suite, and that's it.
Yeah.
It's named for Clarence's cousin.
That's interesting. Now, the second album, Transformation, The Speed of Love.
Yeah.
Now that you worked with Bill Botnick on there, who'd done the Doors and Beach Boys and stuff.
Bruce Botnick.
Bruce Botnick, yeah. That had to be exciting to go into the studio with somebody with his pedigree.
It was good fun, and Bruce was very hip sonically. I think what happened was Bruce got a better drum sound than we got on Force of Feelings, even though Billy Cobham, one of the greatest drummers around, was sort of, as producer, that was his sort of area. And we were so focused on other things, not to criticize Billy at all, because he got the record done and it came out really fine. But we were just later sort of sonically wanting something different, And actually, here's another small note that people don't know. My album, Force of Feelings, that was Billy Cobham's first job as a producer.
Wow.
Yeah, it was the first time the record company, hired him to produce anybody or anything. So he was new at it as well, So, but it was interesting going to Bruce the next time because he had a whole different sonic take, and it was different. He just had a different approach. And the environment was nice. And again, we recorded Transformation at a studio that doesn't exist anymore, Caribou Studios in Colorado, in Boulder, Colorado. Was a fantastic place. I don't know if now it's just a cattle ranch, because it was actually a working cattle ranch by Jimmy Guercio, the manager of Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
It was huge. He had like 500 more acres of he would say, "Oh, Jimmy, where's your property stop?" He goes, "Well, it's like over there somewhere." And it was in the Netherlands, not Boulder. It's in Netherlands, Colorado. It's way, way high up, And it was a great place. It was actually a working cattle ranch and a recording studio. One of the first, what they call boutique studios back in that day. where, you know, you go there and you stay there and the studio is right there. You don't drive from your hotel to a studio somewhere. It was fantastic atmosphere. So we enjoyed that. And yeah, and that was a different record too. I was really interested in more in doing longer songs. Like, you know, Forest of Feelings is a collection of much shorter songs and goes through different things. And my kind of writing at the time, I was really into changing time signatures and suites and all that. And Transformation was kind of, it's a little bit of an influence that I had at that time from the British bands like Yes and Genesis. I really liked what Yes was doing, the way they were, you know, their records were constructed, and the same thing with Genesis and Peter Gabriel. So yeah, I wanted Transformation is like all of side one, if I don't remember it correctly. It's like 19 minutes or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, interestingly, yeah, you mentioned John Anderson, you mentioned Peter Gabriel. You went from being, somebody who had a deep appreciation for their music to actually playing with them.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was interesting, and to this day, it's ironic. I mean, the way I know Peter Gabriel is because after Forest of Feelings had just been out, maybe like a couple of months or something, the record company got a telegram. That's how this it goes back to, like, a telegram. And I got a phone call from the record company saying, we got a telegram from Peter Gabriel, and he's doing a project outside of Genesis, and he's probably going to leave and everything. He wants to know if you'd be interested in playing keyboards on it. And I was like, yeah, absolutely, you know. So he flew over to New York, and we met. He actually came down to where I lived in New Jersey at the time. He had a bunch of demos of his music on cassettes that he played for me. I took him to a tone rehearsal because we were rehearsing in the same town, and he got to see some of that. And in the end of the day, the project didn't work out because our touring schedule and his recording schedule were just could not coincide. We would have had to cancel a lot of live stuff, and the record company wasn't into that. But we stayed friends, and some years later, I was, I guess, 86 when the So came out. I got a call saying that, like, he's going to change the band, and would I be interested in doing that? So, but it was a lot of that music. I got to say, one of the reasons that I ended up, I don't think about this often, but since you kind of brought that up, a lot of the reasons that I ended up playing with so many different people of just diverse genres is really to do with the attraction of that record, Forest of Feelings. Because I got a call from that record from Peter Gabriel, Stanley Clarke called me. That's how I ended up on Stanley Clarke's albums, School Days and Journey to Love, and even his other one. Lenny White, called me to play on his record. Just a lot of stuff happened from that music, and it was the start of a lot of people interested in having me work with them from hearing what I was doing on that first record. Wow,
that's going to be very gratifying.
It is. It is. I am truly grateful. It is gratifying.
Yeah.
And I didn't expect it. I always wanted to do. And then again, man, I end up working years later. I end up working with Jack Bruce and Eric Clapton years later, years apart. But I mean, my favorite, Cream and Hendrix were it for me. It was Cream and Hendrix and Zeppelin as well. But man, to actually get to work with people that inspired you to play has been really an incredible blessing.
Well, tell me this, because this is obviously something else we got questions about. What memories do you have of playing with Jack?
Oh boy, a lot actually, because we worked on two projects. The first thing was the Jack Bruce and Friends, which was Jack Bruce, Billy Cobham, Clem Clemson, and myself. So we did that album. I think it was called I Always Wanted to Do This. We did one studio album, a tour of the States and a tour of Europe. And the band ended in the airport at the end of the European tour. Everybody just kind of said, okay, that's the end of that. It's great, all the best. And then we all went about our lives. And then I got a call later from Jack saying that he wanted to do trio stuff. And he was going to use Bruce Gary, the drummer from the Knack, do you remember? Bruce Gary, Jack, and myself. So I worked. We put that together, and we did a lot of stuff in Europe. We toured. We toured every Stadthalle in Germany, and some other stuff. It was great. But Jack played piano. I played synthesizer, and I was playing bass with my left hand. And then on some other songs, I was playing guitar because he wanted to do some Cream stuff. I was playing guitar, and he was playing bass and singing. It went on like that, and we were doing versions of his some things from his solo albums that he'd written, and he would throw in some Cream songs like Politician or I'm So Glad or whatever. And then he was playing bass, I'm playing guitar and drums. It was great fun.
Yeah, I would think. And I'm gonna guess you probably had a pretty good time playing with Eric Clapton as well.
And incredible, probably one of the best tours. And one of these don't go on so much, but excuse me, they used to go on. That was an entire year. That project started in January of 2001, and it ended in December of 2001, with some breaks in between. But yeah, that was a real super special time. And I'm really happy about that. It's happened, and I got to meet him and know him a bit and play with him. Is that there's a double album recorded from that. It's called One More Car, One More Rider. Mm-hmm. It's a great record. And the band was incredible. It was like Nathan East, Andy Fairweather Lowe, Steve Gadd, myself, Billy Preston for part of it. We didn't have him for all of it, but we had him for the US part. Greg Fillinganes was in part of it, and it was incredible. It was a really, really good year. But I'm glad it got recorded. I really am. I'm really glad it got recorded.
Yeah. Well, tell you what, David, to get back to your music, we had a question from Nancy who says, when I listened to Fade Away from the True Stories album, it sounds like a song that had a big impact on Prince. Am I crazy? She asks.
Wow. You're not crazy. I don't know. Listen, that song almost got covered by this British singer. Was it Paul? Is it Paul Rogers? That song almost got covered by him.
Wow.
Yeah. No, I don't know if you're crazy about that. I don't know. I'm not going to attempt Prince, God rest his soul. I wouldn't attempt to accuse him of any degree of plagiarism. I think it's a feeling. But yeah, what can you say?
Yeah, no, I mean, when you listen to it, there is definitely a feel to it that you hear in both records. So,
do you know what it is? Here's what it is musically, technically. It's Baroque harmony with a funky beat. That's really what it is. The harmony is like Baroque. It's like Bach. It's Baroque harmony, but with a backbeat. And then to this day, I remember that's why bands like ELP, or if Genesis got up to anything like that, or different bands, anytime I hear Baroque harmony with like a backbeat or some funk, it drives me crazy. It's a special, special thing.
Absolutely. Well, to digress for a moment, we were talking about the Transformation album before.
Yes, sorry.
We had a question from Eugene, who wants to know what the eggs represent on the album cover for Transformation.
Okay. Well, this is a funny story. The eggs are meant to represent the three of us, right? There's two eggs on the thing. I don't have the cover in front of me, but it was two eggs. And I seem to be the only one coming out of the shell, and the others are on the thing. So what they were meant to represent was the three of us, myself, Ernest Carter, and Jerry Carboy. And they were done by a school friend of mine, Tony Tillman, a great painter. He did that cover. And I remember I really wanted something exactly like he came up with. In my mind, it was like, because we spoke about it and it was great. But I remember the other guys were kind of, I think especially Jerry was kind of like, how come you're the only one coming out of the egg? So, I don't know. It was just one of those moments. So, but that's what they were meant to represent, the three of us. And, there you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you another question that we have here. Roland asks, what memories do you have of the Amnesty International tour in '88?
Ooh, good ones. Good ones. That was kind of like, the only negative thing I remember about that was, in a way, it was kind of like going back to school, because at one point it sort of became cliques of people, like the cool kids and the maybe not so cool kids, or maybe you're cool this week and not so cool today. It was a little bit of that at some point as it went on and on. But more than that, it was kind of like music camp. It was mostly a lot of fun. And it was great to be in Africa with, with Bruce and Clarence. And I was working with Peter Gabriel at the time, but, Sting was there, and it was mostly an awesome time. I remember on one of our days off, Clarence and I took off together. We went to some sculpture parks together. We were like looking for some art and stuff maybe to take home. We hung out, and we went to one of those things where you got to be in a Jeep and there's like lions and shit around with a gun. We did that. It was nice. We had some really nice moments. I remember walking around. See, the thing about what people don't realize about concert touring like that on the big scale, you're playing arenas and stuff. You're in Paris, you're playing the biggest place in Paris. You're in London, you're in a big. But when your time is free, when you have days off, or if you just have a rehearsal day and no show, or say you've got 2 shows in a row and then you're in town still for another day or whatever before you move on, all your free time is like a mini vacation. But you can have a mini vacation in Paris and London, wherever you are in the world. You just got to get your butt out of bed and sort yourself out and take advantage of where you are. So, and I remember walking around the streets we were in Zimbabwe, right? This is before it went really totally south. 88 was already beginning to go funny, but it was the coolest thing in the world to come out of my hotel and I'm just walking in a neighborhood in Zimbabwe. It looked like, and it was fine. People didn't think it was strange because they didn't know me, whatever, but the energy of it, the sunlight in Africa is different, and it was just, I've been many times now with a few different artists to Africa, but it's just something about it. Of course, being an African-American, being of African descent, there's a whole other thing to your psyche when you arrive in Africa, which is super interesting. But the place itself, the natural beauty of the place is just super special. Yeah. So I have good memories of that tour, a long way around your question. One last memory of that tour, I remember that at one point, every time we landed the plane, it would devolve into a pillow fight. A pillow fight. And the pilot would come on and tell us, like, you guys got to sit down and buckle up your seats because we're landing the plane now. And, there'd be this announcement as well. It's like, we're going to land in like 10 minutes. Boom, it would start. And then it would like subside as we'll sit down and don't kill ourselves.
Too bad there's that video of that floating around.
Yeah. This is before the days of like selfies and everything, Yeah.
Exactly. Well, tell you what, David, another question. Alvin would like to know what sticks out in your mind most from playing with Jeff Beck.
Oh man, what fun that was. I could have done with more of that, hopefully maybe before we both pass on, we'll play together again. Jeff Beck is one of the nicest human beings in the world. And he's one of the most amazing guitarists ever. He's just like, he is his own thing. He's like, see, sonically to me, the real creators in guitar were Jimmy and Jeff, right? They have different styles of playing, but what Jeff gets up to sonically, the sounds that he coaxes out of the guitar, the sensitivity he plays with is just unbelievable, and on top of that, he's a really nice person. I remember rehearsals were kind of difficult. I was begging for them for a set list of like, what are we going to play and not play so I can get ready. And I was coming off of another tour with another artist, this Italian artist, Zucchero. So that was ending. As soon as that was over, I think I had like maybe 2 weeks to go home, have a quick vacation with my wife. Boom, I'm back on a plane, go to Australia, start rehearsals for the Spit. And I kept, please, what are we playing at set list? I couldn't name, no one would make anything up. It was like all over the place. So when I got there, it took a couple of days for rehearsals to sort of take shape. And it was challenging for me rehearsal-wise right up until the first show. But we really buckled down. I worked really, really hard to we finally figure out, here's what we're playing, here's what we're not playing. Don't waste time learning this, spend time on that. It was really important because I'm programming a synthesizer. It's not like if being a synthesist, right? Keyboard player or a synthesist, which I consider myself to be, along with as much as a pianist or an organist, whatever. when you're working with someone like Sting or Peter Gabriel, you're programming your instrument to handle multiple layers of sound. You're basically covering all the keyboard overdubs on the record, and maybe some other stuff as well. It takes time, right? So finally, so boom, we hit the first show, and the first show was great. And I remember he said this himself. He said every show after that, I think it was maybe I was only the Australia and Japan part. Was it maybe like about maybe 12 shows or something? I don't know. But everyone was better. It just went up and up and up every night. And he was fantastic. He was just such a cool guy to be around. I remember one night we opened for Eric Clapton at the Saitama Super Arena, which is this big kind of arena. It's like a transformer of a building. These technicians will stand there with these things that push buttons, and like walls will fade away and things will come up. It's wild. They can configure it to any size it needs to be. So we played that, and we had the night off, I think before we moved on to wherever it was. And this friend of his, I think it was one of the promoters people who are there to sort of show you where to eat and look, make sure you need anything. He goes, I know this great after hours place, come on. So he took me and Jeff, nobody else was interested in going. And we ended up in this place. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning in this funky bar in Tokyo, and they're playing Motown, like exclusively Motown music. And there was some food, we had a couple of drinks, and just talking about stuff, hanging out and talking about like, what music we liked and when we first heard this song or that song, So he was just, as a musician, fantastic, and as a person, a really, really cool guy to be around. And he has one last thing about Jeff. He has the funniest Jackie Mason impression. I'm not kidding you. You will cry. You will cry laughing. It's brilliant. It's incredible.
That's funny just thinking about it, David.
We were standing in line. It was like one of those things you had to get up early. So we're at the airport. We're standing in line to get onto the plane. It's like 8:45 or something. And there's me, Tal Wilkenfeld, Vinny, and Jeff. And Jeff launches into this impression of him. And we just died because first of all, you can't believe how accurate it is. And you can't believe what's coming out of this Jeff Beck's mouth. It's too funny. But he's a fantastic guy.
That's wonderful. Well, tell you another viewer question here. Jackie asks, you had the album Cinema. Have you ever considered scoring films?
I have considered it, and I've done a little bit of it. Not as much as I'd like, but yeah. I think what I'm going to have to do is like direct a film and score it myself. I think it may come to that. But yes, and I'm open to anyone who has an interest in me scoring their films. But I have done some things. I did some stuff in Italy some years ago, some small films in New York State. But yes, yeah, I think I'm always open for that. I'm always open for any kind of combination of video and music, I tend to write like that. Maybe that's what you're saying. I tend to compose like that because for me, the whole thing is a sort of visual experience as well. It's not just a bunch of notes and feelings. There's imagery being created for me.
Well, quite a bit of the music that you've done sounds like it, is basically, for a film that hasn't been made yet.
There you go. And maybe now, see, you just connected it. Maybe that's the film I have to make. That all of that I'm making has to be a thing. We'll see. We'll see how much energy, time, and money I have before I drop dead.
See, if you work backwards, start with the song, then do it. At least now you've got lyrics, or tone of the music to kind of guide where the screenplay goes.
I think something can happen here. I think so.
Well, if you need a hand with that, let me know.
Thank you. I'm sure I'm going to need all kinds of help with it.
Don't know how helpful I could be, but I'm willing. All right. Well, tell you what, we haven't gotten to the new album, the current album yet.
Yes.
And tell you with that, the Eyes Wide Open is the name of the album. In the Middle of the Night, the piano on that sounds absolutely wonderful. And I like how you've got all of the things going on kind of like behind the piano, if
Yeah.
you will. And the piano serves as like the vocal, if you will.
Yeah.
On it, kind of like what Booker T used to do with the MGs, where his organ was the voice, of it.
I
Exactly.
did that on purpose. And if you notice, if you listen to it, not once in the entire song is there a chord, an actual chord from the piano. It's all single note stuff. The chords are coming from the keyboard. It's a synthesizer track in there. And there's a spooky kind of sound. So all the chord stuff and the piano is like single note, single voice stuff over top of it. The only time the piano hits a chord is when I very sarcastically put a whole tone scale on the end of "Oh Say Can You See." That's a chord, when I did that melody, da, 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 dee, but it's like, like Stravinsky "Say Can You See," pow,
Yeah.
Yeah, that was all very much on purpose. I wanted to create a real atmosphere like that. And you know who inspired me actually on that, as far as the piano thing, was Joe Zawinul.
Okay.
Joe Zawinul from Weather Report. One of my favorite piano solos of all time is the way he plays piano on Jocko's song Havana from the Heavy Weather album.
Mm-hmm.
And they each take like 2 solos. They each take like 2 rounds of solos. His playing is just like that. It's just like this piano voice over top of everything. He's not playing chords, and he's spacing out. He's not continuously playing. He's always kind of very hip space when he plays and when he doesn't play. But it's just lovely kind of single voice thing over top of that. So I wanted to have that kind of feeling in it as well.
Yeah. Well, I think that's, I don't want to say a lost art, but a rare art, giving space, because it seems like so frequently it's, trying to grab, fill so many notes as you can, within it. And that open space lets it breathe.
Well, it depends on the song. It depends on the player.
Right.
That's really what it is, because you have to. I mean, for my favorite players are people who, they're from that generation of where we all just, you heard this, you want to be like that. For instance, Wayne Shorter. Nobody ever took a more profound musical solo than Wayne Shorter, ever. His whole ethos, his whole way of what he's doing is just beyond. It's amazing. And it can be the most brilliant and fluid playing of all time. You can play at Coltrane if you wanted to. Or it could be the most sensitive, spacious, highlighting thing. On the records where he plays, on Joni Mitchell's records, say, like Wild Things Run Fast or anything, Don Juan's Reckless Daughter, he's playing soprano sax, but it's almost like he's playing speech patterns. If you really listen enough, and he is sometimes, because he's highlighting what she's saying lyrically. So to have that kind of musical sensitivity on top of just being badass, I can do anything on the saxophone, it's really special,
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you another track on Eyes Wide Open, and I had a few folks listen to it who I knew weren't familiar, with the album. But the one thing that pretty much was universal with them, after they listened to If, they all said, "Man, I wish he would have recorded with Steely Dan."
Well, that's very insightful, because that, for me, that's kind of an homage to Steely Dan. The musical part of that whole song, that is very, very nice. You got it. Yeah. Absolutely. Wanted it to sound like a Steely Dan track. I really did.
Well, I'm going to say, based on their feedback, you succeeded.
Great. That's very kind.
I'll tell you, another thing that we had questions about was the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony.
Yeah.
That had to be a extremely memorable night for you.
Yes, it was.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it was memorable just for the event itself to be, part of the E Street Band and brought in. But it was memorable because my dear friend Peter Gabriel was also being inducted on the same night. And I'm also in Peter Gabriel's touring band. So when I got the call that Peter's being inducted, who's going to come and play? Well, it's Manu Katché, myself, Tony Levin, and we had a guest. And David Rhodes, of course, and we had a guest guitarist or percussionist or something. But it was like, so I had to prepare with two bands. I had to rehearse with Peter in a whole other part of town, downtown somewhere. And we played Digging in the Dirt and Sledgehammer, I think. I could be wrong. Digging in the Dirt and something, yeah. And we killed it, man. We nailed it. It was fantastic. But, you know, I hop in a cab, go down and rehearse with him. And then on the same day, go back to the theater where we did the thing and rehearse with Bruce for the 3 songs we did, the E Street Shuffle and all this, which I hadn't played in like 50 some years. It was fantastic. So it was double duty for me, but it was just unbelievably, you know, like my cup runneth over, as I say sometimes. It was an amazing night. And then the night of the performance, they shuttled me between 2 different dressing rooms to get ready for the thing, because it was all over the place. It wasn't like, you can't be stationary here. And I'm walking down the aisle with my clothes on for the thing, and here comes Sheryl Crow coming this way because she's moving, and we stop and chat for a second. And it was just great. Again, whenever there's a bunch of music to get musicians and artists together, I think it's like a kind of music camp, and the energy is really special. You know, it's wonderful. So it was a super special night. I didn't get home. We brought the sun up that night, because after the whole thing ended, it was like after party time. And me, my wife, my publicist, my attorney and his wife, and some friends, we just really found a great party, and we hung out there till the sun came up. It was great fun.
Yeah. Tell me this, David, when you were playing with the E Street Band, did you have like any flashbacks to when you were first playing those songs and how far those songs and you guys had come?
There's not a lot of time in the present moment to do that. It's not that mental. When you're playing with people, with other musicians, I'm sitting in my chair later on thinking about that. But in the moment when it's like, there's Bruce right there, there's everybody, and boom, we're playing the tune, it's all about the present moment, and like, you know, remembering the part and putting your feeling at this moment into it. You know, we're not just recreating exactly what we did months ago, you know?
Yeah.
So
now afterwards, did it sink in right away, or
afterwards for the first party, Bruce and I walked upstairs to there's a party on the top floor of the building that they had the thing in. So we was afterwards, and there's all kinds of people everywhere. So we find ourselves like walking up to the bar up top, and we cracked up about all kinds of stuff. We were talking about all kinds of issues about, wow, remember when this happened and how so-and-so used to do this. So yeah, but that's all very much after the fact.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I'll tell you what, David, we got one more viewer question to get to here. Shirley would like to know, how did David and Sting end up working together?
Okay. That's kind of a long story. I met Sting when I was in Jack Bruce and Friends with Billy Cobham and Jack Bruce and all that. And the first time, I was, of course, a huge fan of the Police. Like, who wasn't a fan of the Police when we heard that? It was like awesome. So original. Fantastic. So we did a show in Germany. It was a TV show called Rock Palast. And it's even, they've actually, you can find it musically, it was recorded. And so it was Jack Bruce and Friends, and then the Police and Graham Parker and the Rumor, right? And I think we were opening, and then Graham Parker, I don't remember how big the Police were then. I don't remember who was the real headliner. It wasn't us, right? So anyway, we get on stage, and we're doing our sound check, and we look over, and the whole band, the Police are all standing in the wings checking out our sound check. You know, there's Stewart's checking out Billy Cobham, you know, Sting is checking out Jack, and they're all just like really nice. So we ended the sound check. They came over and introduced themselves and said, you know, I'm so-and-so, hi, nice to meet you. And it kind of sort of started there. And then what happened was the manager of Jack Bruce and Friends, a guy named John Scher, was a big concert promoter on the East Coast, the Meadowlands and a lot of stuff off the East Coast. So whenever the Police played in America, especially on the East Coast, I would get a phone call, and they said, hey, they want you to invite you down to the show. Great. And I saw them during the, what was that crazy tour they did? It was the 3 of them, and then Sting started playing synthesizer on stage. But every time they were on the East Coast, I got a call down, and we would chat afterwards. Okay, so finally Police is over. And then I found this out years later. He had been trying to find me to be part of the Blue Turtles album, and he could not locate me apparently somehow. Okay, too bad about that, because I could have used the work. but anyway, he met Kenny and Branford and all that. That happened after all that. But we somehow, stayed in touch because I was working a lot with Peter Gabriel, and Sting and Peter are friends. Sting would be at a Peter Gabriel show, whatever. So I get a call one day from Danny Quattrochi, Sting's technician, saying that Kenny Kirkland has gone missing and we can't find him, and Sting really wants to finish the record. That was Soul Cages. So he said, can you get on a plane and come to Italy, Pisa, Italy, and help us finish the record? Which I did, and that was the start of working together. And a lot of different. I think I did about 3 or 4 albums in a row with him. More touring than we can remember right now. And, but that was a start.
Wow. Tell me this. Now, you also mentioned that you've got another project going as well. They're in Kauai.
I do. Yes. Thank you for reminding me. The very good people at KKCR Kauai Community Radio have given me a show, for a 2-hour show every other Monday. And it's sort of thematic. I get to play whatever I like, but we've done shows on, we did a tribute to Chick Corea when he passed away. We've done shows on singers, film music. It's sort of different every week. But kkcr.org is the website. And if you can't listen, I'm in Hawaii. I'm 6 hours behind everyone, most of the world. Okay? There's a 6-hour difference between you and me, and more between most people. But they have a website, and you can archive if you can't hear it live. Of course, they leave the archives up for 2 weeks, and you can hear the whole show. And it's really fun. It's called The Pleasure of Sound.
All right.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Well, tell you what, David, we have had your website, going throughout the show at various times, so folks can find you there and get all things David. Excellent. And link to your music and everything else posted there. Is there anything else that you want to make sure that we talk about here before we wrap this one up?
It's been a pleasure. It's been so nice to talk to you. And thank you so much for any attention that you give my music. I truly appreciate it.
No, it's not a problem at all. We thank you for taking the time to join us.
It's my pleasure.
On that note, everyone, thank you for watching. Have a good night.
Ahui ho.
This has been Music Night at the Majestic with Michael Boswell. If you enjoyed this edition of Music Night at the Majestic, follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and at musicnight.net. Music Night at the Majestic is a copyright production of Starliner Media. Any use of the accounts and descriptions of this program, its audio or visual content, without the express written consent of Starliner Media is prohibited. Thank you for joining us this evening. We'll see you next time for Music Night at the Majestic. This is your announcer speaking. Starliner Media.